And next I would like to introduce Kathy Bosiak. Kathy is a science teacher at Lincolnton High School in North Carolina. She has been teaching for over 20 years and is very passionate about project-based learning and connecting her students to the world. She is an iEARN project facilitator and currently serves as a global education ambassador for iEARN USA. She has participated in the Global Zoo Project, Solar Cookers, GOMI on Earth, and Daffodils and Tulips.
I've been doing this kind of thing for a long time, and I like you said earlier, I'm a firm believer in project-based learning, but I also understand that there's a different, sometimes you have students coming in at different levels and they don't understand the sort of the freedom that goes with project-based learning. And so this one, I listed 2 different SDG goals, but there's actually about 5 of them that is covered under this particular topic. And I like the fact that, again, you have a guideline if you're uncertain of what you'd like to do. It is across the board open for everything from kindergarten to, I'm going to use it with my AP students in the spring, because you can do as much as you would like to do. GOMI looks at garbage, and GOMI looks at what's going on with garbage, and part of the process of making students understand what's going on with the environment is making them aware. And so I chose GOMI because that absolutely makes them aware. They will do some tracking and then turn around and collaborate with somebody on another level and talk to students in other countries about what their garbage is like, and why don't you have as much garbage as we have, or why do you have more than we have? So I think those are very, very important things. It's, again, a very manageable thing. I think Jennifer mentioned that earlier, and that's a lot of the things that go on with most of the iEARN projects. You can do as little or as much as you want, come up with an end product, and the end product, again, varies from student to student. This one, and we'll show you guys at the end, this one has got a number of different projects. But I think the other part of it too is that, as with Jennifer, it answers the question, how does what we know about garbage change our perspective, and how does it change our behavior with regard to what we produce is trash? So I like this. It introduces a lot of things, but you can take it and put it on a really in-depth level if you choose to. Good. So with GOMI on Earth, what's been popping up in the chat box is GOMI is actually the Japanese word for trash. And so what I encourage people to do when I talk about GOMI is I encourage them just to put the word GOMI up on the board and ask the kids what they think it means. And it's really interesting, the types of feedback that you get on that. But GOMI is actually broken down into 3 parts. In the first part, you're a GOMI detective, and you follow the journey of GOMI through your life. So you look at, and you can break it down into a lot of different ways, but essentially what you do is you look at the trash that you produce in you yourself, and then you look at the trash that your family produces, and then you follow, where does it go? Does it, just because it goes into the trash can doesn't mean it's gone away, which is what a lot of kids think. And so they can actually do a number of different activities with that. They can build maps to follow where it's going. They can, if it's an older group of students, they can track the actual amount, as in pounds of garbage that they've done. So that's sort of a wide open, piece to it. Where does it go? How does it get there? Who picks it up? Do you take it yourself? Is there a cost for it? Why is it going there? Why aren't you reusing it or recycling it? The second part of it is you take it from your home and your community to the world. And you start looking at things like, okay, so now it's in the ocean. Now what happens? Well, you start creating things like GOMI belts and garbage patches in the center of all of the oceans. And you start having, different trash wash up on shores where it didn't start. One of the great activities that you can do with that is there's an activity about some rubber ducks that washed overboard from a big tanker during a storm, and you can actually track where the ducks ended up, and in places that you wouldn't have expected. You can look at GOMI mountains, which are landfills. and what some people have done with them to actually turn them into, you know, parks, and how do you reclaim this area that was once a landfill. One of the newer things that you look at is things like microplastics. You know, trash is one thing, but now we're starting to understand that the ocean's full of microplastics, and that's something that's going to be much more difficult to clean up. So that's the GOMI world, or the world GOMI reality. The third part of it is you're now the activist. What part of this really bothers you? And here's where the project-based learning really plays into it. How can you fix it? What can you do in your small little corner of the world to change what's going on? And it can be something as simple as going and talking to a younger class, you know, a younger group of students. It can be writing letters to people. It can be, and I'll show you a little bit later under some of the products, but you know, it can be just as simple as looking at your own life and how do you cut back on what you've done. So GOMI on Earth, the opportunities for different things in class are limitless as far as only your imagination and your students' imagination and what's important to them and you to get the whole point of, you know, educating about what we're actually doing with trash across to them. I'm gonna, well, I mean, my slide's up there, and then you can obviously see that there's been at least 30, you know, plus countries participating in GOMI on Earth over the past number of years that this has been around. But, you know, I want to take this a little bit sideways, because we can all say the same thing about collaboration and about global partners and learning what's going on in other countries with the same area of study that our kids are looking at. But I think the other part that we need to get across to people is the fact that it's going to allow our students to understand that they're all in this together, and that they're all students, and that they're all experiencing the same issues, and that they're all experiencing life in general together. And I think that's a very powerful thing when we're trying to talk about, you know, creating a generation of global citizens. One of the things that my kids, we also do the solar cooker project, and one of the things that my kids came to me after she did some posting on the forum, she said, you know, I'm really confused, because I talked about a s'more, and the student that I was talking to, who happened to be in Iran, said, I have no clue what you're talking about. So, you know, I think that in and of itself, you know, whether it's an environmental project or whether it's any other project that iEARN offers, which they're all fabulous, is that it gives our students the power to collaborate and to understand and to empathize and to be part of a bigger thing than just where they are. And so, you know, I apologize for going a little bit sideways with that, because we're all going to say the same thing about our projects as far as, you know, the collaborations and how fabulous, because they are, and the fabulousness of experiencing that environmental piece of it. But I think it goes deeper than that. And I think that, you know, everybody that's involved in this particular, you know, webinar right at the moment needs to understand that and take that back to the folks that they're trying to convince to be part of these things, you know. So that's my 2 cents. In my classroom, I'm a very firm believer that my students decide what their final project is. Project-based learning is me guiding them, and if I guide too much, then sometimes it doesn't always work quite the way it ought to. So the very first thing that I have them do as a final project sort of precursor is they do a reflection. You know, what worked for me? What did I learn from this? Did it make an impact on me at all? You know, that type of thing. But then I let them choose different things that they like to do, how to get their message across. And so one year I actually had a group that presented at a conference that was online called Global EdCon. And they took some of the work that they had done and some of the things that they had learned and actually ran a session on Global EdCon. We also have a club at our school called TED Ed Club, where the students put together their own TED Talks and talk about things that they're passionate about. And so I had a student who became very involved with what she was doing and is in the process now, right, of creating her own TED Talk. But if you look on the screen, what you're looking at on the left-hand side is just simply an organized beach trash collecting project that went on as a final, you know, sort of a final project to show how much trash there was. And that's a group from a school in Taiwan. On the right-hand side is another of my students' work. She became very concerned with the amount of trash that she was generating just on her own. And so she put together a notebook where each page represents a single day and how much trash she individually created at school. And so she's now taken that, and that's become something that she shared with the elementary school kids. And she's still working on it. The notebook's about 6 inches thick, but so there's a lot of different products. Presentations are great, but if that's not where your kids are at, then don't, then that's cool too. It's what works for them and how they can become activists and get their message across to people. So what you're looking at in the center is a quote from one of my ninth graders a couple of years ago, and that's his definition of trash. And that's what he came up with at the end of GOMI, and didn't even think about it beforehand, had no clue, didn't bother him. Trash was trash, somebody else picked it up. And then the quote down at the bottom is one of the middle school teachers after she participated in GOMI, and she said, that's what it's all about. Everything starts with awareness. And so kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at your final products. It is all about what the kids are going to portray to somebody else and how they're going to get their message across. And that's different sometimes for everybody.